Do you feel like you don't have enough discipline to learn a language? Because you start out really, really motivated, but then you miss a day. And when you miss a day, you feel like crap about it. And this starts you on a downward spiral where you end up hating language learning and hating yourself. What if I were to tell you that learning a language every single day is not what successful language learning looks like? In fact, trying to learn every single day is a thing that's preventing you from being successful. It's a mindset that's holding you back. So if you're the kind of person that makes really strict routines only to fail them every time, or you try to force yourself to be the kind of person that never messes up, but then when you do, because you're human, you feel like a failure, I help people create language learning strategies that kill all that guilt and that perfectionism, and instead end up in actually learning a language. So if that sounds like what you need in your language learning, click the link below to schedule a call with me. So let's talk about where this pressure comes from, because it's not just you. In fact, it was me too for like 10 years. In my opinion, this comes from 3 different things. The first one is our general hustle culture that we have right now, where you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get up at 5 a.m. in the morning to work out and then study, and that's how you become a productive person, where it's no pain, no gain. All of these messages that are all around that are telling us that in order to achieve something, you have to struggle and you have to be in pain and hurt. But in reality, none of that is true. Then there is school, where most of us start learning a language for the first time, where the best way to make progress in your language learning when you're in school is to memorize these vocab words, learn these conjugations, and get A's on tests. And the way that you know that you're succeeding in your language learning is if you get that A+. So then when you go out into the real world and you try to apply that same strategy to your language learning, it feels horrible because it doesn't work in real life language learning. So here's that shame again. And then of course we have the internet and all these internet polyglot clickbait titles. We have studying for 9 hours a day, where we have this is how I got fluent in 2 months. All of these really unrealistic expectations of what it takes to learn a language from people who don't seem to have full-time jobs, they don't have families, they don't have chronic illnesses, and where the message is that if you can't commit 8 to 9 hours a day learning a language and doing nothing else completely focused, then there's something that's wrong with you. Basically, all of these things have taught us that if we are not perfect in our language learning, we're wasting our time. Because if we can't check all of these boxes off of our to-do list, then why waste your time? So of course, this completely backfires. So at this point, you're not learning a language to learn a language. You're not learning about a different way of life. You're not expanding your horizons. You're not connecting to new people that you wouldn't have connected with before. Instead, you are so focused on that perfection that everything else just feels painful. You're focused on making sure that you don't miss a day. You're focused on making sure that when you try to have a conversation, you're perfect and you're not making any mistakes, which isn't actually possible. So when you do make mistakes, you feel so bad, you probably just give up again. So every minute that you spend in your language learning, you're so distracted by the anxiety in your brain telling you that maybe you're not being good enough, maybe you're not learning fast enough, what if there's a better way to do it? What if you're too old to learn a language? What if you're not spending enough time? You're so distracted by all this noise that even when you try to learn a language, you can't. But here's the thing, the pain that you're experiencing does not make you a better language learner. In fact, all it's really doing is causing you pain. It's not teaching you the language. In fact, it's pulling you farther and farther and farther away from your actual language learning goals. For every hour that you spend obsessing over whether or not that hour is long enough, the worse you feel, the less confident you are, and so the farther away you get from your goal. So if you've been stuck in that loop, if you're always starting over again and again, and then quitting every single time you can't be perfect, we can change that. And we can do it in a way that's personalized for you if you click the link below in the description to book a call. So we have this giant mess of language learning. How do we fix it? We need to change our mindset about what language learning actually is. Here's the thing that I want you to understand. We have been taught that learning a language is a test for you to pass, but that's not what it is at all. Language learning is something that grows over time. It's something that you're really bad at to start with, and then as you keep continuing on and keep putting the effort and keep learning new things, you start getting better and better and better over time. But when you first start out, there's no A+. You're floundering, you feel like a caveman, you feel stuck, and you need to basically get through until you're at a point where you can actually use the language, and it takes time. And I know, you're thinking language learning itself is painful and I hate it and I just want to be fluent. I don't want to have to go through all of the stress and guilt and overwhelm. The good news is that you don't have to. Because right now, I bet that what you do is you follow the advice of what you learned in school, or maybe internet polyglots, maybe your friends who recommend certain apps or certain textbooks or certain courses. But that's not the right move. The right move here is to choose the resources and the strategies that match you. Because when the resources match you and they fulfill you, then you'll actually want to learn a language. And then when you want to learn a language, it won't matter as much how much you suck at it at first, because you'll actually enjoy doing it. And that idea that you have stuck in your mind that you have to study every single day in order to be successful and consistent, let's drop that. Consistency is valid and important. However, the rules of what consistency actually means changes from person to person. If you're the type of person who can study for an hour every single day and never miss a day, congratulations, that's amazing. I am jealous. For some people, that's too much. For some people, that's too rigid. Some people need a 3 times a week kind of consistency. Some people need a 5 minutes here and there type of consistency. Consistency is not a monolith. It looks different for every language learner, and until we recognize that that means something different to every individual person, you're not actually going to be able to achieve it. When you can focus on the consistency that matters to you and that functions for you, then you'll start to feel joy in your language learning, and it'll feel good, and it's something that you will want to do. Because if you have to force yourself to learn a language, you're not going to learn a language, I can promise you that. For example, I once had a client who was so stressed out about language learning because she knew she wasn't getting anywhere. Especially because not only did she want to learn Russian, but she also wanted to do other things. She wanted to play the piano, she wanted to spend time with her friends, she had other hobbies, other interests. She was working full-time, and there was just no way for her to learn a language every single day without neglecting other hobbies, especially hobbies that she might rather be doing that day. She came to me with the idea that consistency meant every single day, especially after being traumatized by her Duolingo streak. But once we finished working together, she learned that she could study Russian whenever she wanted, and it didn't have to be every single day or every other day. She could study Russian whenever she wanted to. And every mistake that you make that feels like a failure, every time you just cringe when you say the wrong word or conjugate wrong, and those anxious thoughts pop up again talking about how you failed and you should just give up now. What if I were to tell you that mistakes are a good thing? They're not something that should make you feel embarrassed. They're not something to avoid. In fact, mistakes are a sign that you are learning. And I know this comes with a whole lot of societal pressure that, a lot of us, when we've made mistakes in the past, we've been punished, we've been embarrassed, we've been humiliated, and that's valid. We can also learn to shift how we see mistakes in our brain. It takes time, but I promise you we can do this, that mistakes are a sign that you are trying, that you are learning, that you are changing. Once we remove these random ideas that we've learned about language learning that hold us back, we finally get the opportunity to make actual progress and make our language learning look the way that we want it to look. And I really want you to open your mind about all of these rules that you have set in your mind about what language learning looks like. Because I will admit, I am totally guilty of this in language learning and other aspects of life, where I take this rule and I follow it to a T, and I don't realize how much it's hurting me. For example, I definitely had the rule in my language learning where I had to have a Spanish conversation every single day. What really ended up happening was I was stressed out about language learning every single day, and sometimes I could get past that stress to have a conversation, but a lot of times I just had a panic attack and then canceled the call last minute. Not to mention, I was using a very expensive service to do this, which would have made sense if I was able to have those conversations every day, but because I was so stressed out about having those conversations every day, and I was adding that stress of making sure that my money was well spent, of course I burned myself out. I've also had a rule in the past where I had a Spanish textbook, and I had this idea in my head that I had to know every single thing in the textbook perfectly without thinking. So keep in mind, at this point, I was at like an intermediate level. This was a beginner book. So these weren't things that I really had to review, but I had it in my head that if I reviewed them, it'd be better for me. I held myself back by focusing on that perfection, and every single time I made a mistake, I took it as a sign that I needed to study these beginner things more. And I can't even tell you how many times I tried to use a resource or a strategy that I hated and I did not want to do at all, But I ignored that because that wasn't important. What was important was that I had made a choice and I had to stick to it, and I had to do it perfectly to a T, the way that I had set the expectation for myself. And 0% of those experiences ever resulted in anything positive. Now, if you're making all these same mistakes that I was making and that my clients made in the past, you're in the right place. This is what I would do in this situation. Let's say you come to me and you say that you have a deck of 200 flashcards and you're trying to learn this vocabulary and you're memorizing the vocabulary, but whenever you try to have conversations, nothing comes out. One of the first things I would say, do you like using flashcards? Are you finding it beneficial in any way? Is it helping your language learning? Do you feel like you're making progress? And if you are making progress, what does that look like? And how is it different to the progress you actually want to make? We get so focused on what we are taught to look for as progress, as opposed to the progress that we actually want in our language learning. Yeah, sure, you're very good at flipping through your flashcards and the words starting to make sense, you're starting to remember them, but that's not the progress that you're looking for, right? Like, not really. If you want to have conversations, the progress that you're looking for is being able to use that vocabulary in conversations. So it makes total sense that if you have that cognitive dissonance, you're gonna be frustrated. I would ask you what your goal is. And then once I know what your goal is, we can work backward to see what it takes to get there. Instead of choosing a language learning app or strategy at random and hoping that it's gonna work for you, we can look at where you wanna end up, where you are right now, and fill the gaps. Because in reality, you don't need to be more disciplined to learn a language. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be particularly motivated. What you need is a plan that works for you. You need a language learning strategy that's personalized to you, your needs, your goals, and your interests. So if that sounds like you and you're ready to stop giving up every single time you try to start learning a language again, I would love to help. Click the link below to schedule a call with me, and we can discuss your needs and what you're looking for in your language learning, not some imaginary perfect robot student that doesn't actually exist. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I post a new one all about how to learn languages. Bye.